I'm not sure that I understood that those two things get to go together. I thought smart meant anxious.
This is Jews Talk Racial Justice with April and Tracie,
a weekly show hosted by April Baskin and Tracie Decker.
In a complex world, change takes courage.
Wholehearted relationships can keep us accountable. So, April, this election season has been really intense.
Whoo-wee!
Yeah.
Has it ever, Tracie?
So intense. And the emotions have been, for those of us on the, progressive left, those of us who care about fighting racism and fighting systems of oppression, it's been really frustrating and aggravating and disheartening. And now there seems to be a glimmer of hope and joy. And I've been looking forward to talking to you and processing this whole season with you, because so many of the people with whom I am in the work here in Baltimore and around the state spend most of their time being motivated by a deep sense of rage and frustration and anger. And that is what drives them. And though I recognize that those things can be very motivating, it doesn't feel sustainable. And you, on the other hand, I mean, joy is in the name of your enterprise. And I've seen you do it as we work together, that you really bring joy and you hold up moments of joy, even when the rest of us are just sort of burning out on rage. And so I wanted to ask you to, like, I don't know, just talk a little bit about how you do that, where you're seeing sources of joy, and how you just like face the day every day and manage to find joy in seasons where some of us who care about the things you care about have a hard time finding it.
Thank you for that awesome intro. Ooh, there's so much I could say here, so much so that I'm interested in rolling out a whole suite of programs or possibly writing a book about it. And like a suite of like multiple programs about just this thing, because it comes from a lot of different threads and elements of my being. And I'm really glad you asked this, right? So where my mind is going is, one, I'm just feeling, there's so much I want to say. I think this is something that I say a lot on this podcast. Appreciate everybody's patience and kindness and love. But I wanted to speak to this piece about rage, right? Like that you were talking about, and that so many folks run on rage. And also in my circles, I feel like it's not just rage, it's also just terror and fear and concern and heartache.
Yes.
And I generally don't, which doesn't mean I don't experience those things, but you're right. The name of my enterprise is Joyous Justice, and it's very, very intentional and comes from a very specific vision I have for the world and the best pathway I think there is to get there. But I want to specifically circle back to this piece about rage, right? And like unpack that a little bit around the fact that one way that one could describe, or a couple different ways one could describe rage, is that rage is this red hot anger that comes from boundaries being violated, and hurt, and specifically can come from profound hurt and suffering that has remained unaddressed. And that from that rage can build. And so it's really critical in my work to me and my overall perspective. And I wish people would stop emailing me. Maybe although it's for my birthday. We're recording this on my birthday. Yay!
Happy birthday.
This is where we have the audience track going, what? And there's a lot of real suffering and pain there. And so this feels like a tricky dance, and to the point where I've been very careful and kind of quiet and like in a little bit of a small place around some of this, wanting to make sure that I'm not misunderstood, right? That I believe that emotion has a really important and healing and powerful role to play. in clarifying what our needs are. And it's just that um, over the course of my life's journey, I've come to really value and finding relief and healing and actively, proactively seeking out healing modalities. Because while I don't believe that anger is a bad thing, I don't think that anger is, for me and for a number of people I know, but not necessarily everyone, I don't want to make universal or oversimplified statements, is a sustainable source of fuel or energy for people. To me, anger is an emotion that's incredibly important sign to let me know when boundaries and have been violated, or there's a need that's being unaddressed, and for me to address. And now I think what's tricky for a lot of activists and leaders is that we're living in a context where oppression continues to exist. Um, and I think among many different things I could say right now, um, I want to live in a future that is just and joyous and whole and loving. And I have had a lot of success in my life in achieving and manifesting my goals and vision by bringing a number of the things that I'm looking for, by beginning to function from the mindset and the energy of where I want to be in the future, which uh, to me always practically made sense around the more I align with the type of leader I want to be, the more I'll begin to embody that, the more quickly I can embody that now. And so I believe in that strategy very much. I've seen both in my own life and in the lives of leaders I respect them bring a number of wonderful things into the world by saying, I see the reality around me, but I am going to live into the vision of where I think we're going and not be overly attached. Part of this moment, like I'm not numb to it or immune to it per se exactly, but I'm going to see what's happening and use that to further clarify what is needed and focus on the reality where that thing has been achieved and work my way backward from that point and move in the direction of that thing that seems so impossible, whether that be desegregation or scientific inventions or finding cures for illnesses and conditions that people previously said were uncurable. Someone had to think that something was possible that everyone else said was impossible. And I believe, are you with me here? Maybe I should stop. I'm
Yeah,
getting,
no, I'm following. I'm wondering though, like really practically, like in
yeah,
those moments, in the moment where the person who is on the other side of the aisle or um just takes a different viewpoint is saying things or doing things like fighting for policy that uh dehumanizes or like whether it's anti-LGBTQ or like the folks who are out there
yeah,
actively campaigning to prevent to take away marriage from same-sex couples, and that rush of like anger um and just sense of I mean I don't think you're wrong that rage is about boundaries, because yeah, that the person who says that I don't think that gay folks should be allowed to get married are stepping on the boundary of,
people's
life,
civil
liberty, and
civil
the yeah,
liberties. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I agree with you in your analysis of where it comes from. And can you walk me through, like, in that moment when I'm like, "Arr, how dare you? How can you even think that? How are you?" And then I fall into dehumanizing that other person. Like, are you even
yeah.
human that you could
So
think
it's
that?
just,
And I
to
know
me,
that's
like
not
it's
helping me.
right. Well, and so so it's a few different things. There's so much, and with my ADHD brain, it's like which thing. There's so much I could say here, but I think so. A few core things, and I love you bringing it back to the. I love living in theory land, but really pragmatically, um, for me, especially in light of all that's happening in the world around, like we choose to focus on racial justice here, but I believe both you and I also care about environmental sustainability and immigration, which also obviously like we'll likely cover that in future episodes because that intersects very cleanly and evenly
Right.
with
With
race and
race.
racism. Um, but just a range of other social justice issues that I'm interested in collective liberation and wellness for all living beings on this planet, and honestly beyond any sphere in which I may be present in one way or another. I want there to be justice and wholeness and peace, right? Okay, I'm still back in theory land. Okay, pragmatically, in that moment, to me, there's too much at stake for me to waste my time putting my energy into focusing, having my energy drained by the things I don't want. I don't want to spend a minute on that stuff. The only time I ever do, one is that it's just natural, it comes up, but I've been cultivating this practice now for almost 10 years. And actually arguably longer. I've had teachers in it for almost 10 years, but intuitively, when I was the president of the Jewish Multiracial Network, I noticed at times that certain folks would focus on talking about the troublemakers in the Jewish community who are advancing racism. And to me, there was far too much positive work to be doing to move our issue forward, to bring more visibility to it. There were too many people. We didn't have enough resources to meet the need to support the people who want to advance this. And that to me was worth our while, and do that enough and grow that enough that some of these other things become irrelevant, like starve it, like don't add oxygen to that fire. I want to be fanning the flames around fires that keep people warm and feed people who are hungry and bring things I want into the world.
So your advice in that moment of that rage rising, it sounds like what you're saying is to actually consciously say, you know what? I don't want to put my
Pivot,
energy. Yeah, I don't want to put my energy into this. I
pivot.
actually here I want to turn away from this negative to something where my energy can move things forward. And
Yes.
it's a conscious act that you're
Yes. It's a
advocating.
mindful, conscious act. And here's what I would say. There's two different options here in my mind. If it is around something, like if I were a queer person in a queer relationship who was trying to get married. So when it's something, say if it's another man of color being shot by the police,
Right.
um, who is unarmed, when it's clearly unjust, and if it's a little gray, still street like curbside execution is not due
Not
process
okay.
and is
Yeah.
completely inhumane, right? And so for me, as the sister and daughter of men of color who have both been stopped at gunpoint before and thank God weren't shot, so there's two options. If it's not something, if it's something that brings up a fear in me, that brings up emotion that I cannot pivot from, if it's triggered a trauma response or a response of pain, I have a list of any number of proactive healing modalities that I engage in. If I'm in a safe place where I can just go to a restroom and cry, I will go and cry. So if something's coming up, because part of what also happens for folks, it even happens to me. I've noticed I had this epiphany the other day when I had an anxiety attack a couple months back that I realized was related to this issue that I had with AT&T for another conversation. Um, I realized because I lost my phone number of 20 years. And because I was so busy at the time, I didn't allow, even though it's silly and I'll get a new line and it's fine, that there was sorrow and fear. And the time that I first got that number is when I was in college and when things were unstable in my life. And that was my first like thing of adulthood I mean, I was in college, but it was like, I was my first bill that I was paying on my own because I ran up a phone bill with an ex. And with a then boyfriend, my parents were like, "We're not paying these $600 phone bills. You're on your own." So, so that, so losing that was really symbolic. But because I was so busy, it was in the midst of the huge deluge that I received of hundreds of requests coming through, and I didn't allow it to surface. And so then it resurfaced in feeling of unconscious terror days later because I didn't give it a space. And so once I finally connected it after going to the pharmacy, trying to go see a doctor, and then doing eventually being like, wait, this isn't anything. I think this is actually just an anxiety attack and not some amorphous illness. So so there's two options. One, I pivot. And if I can't pivot, then I engage in any number of things that honor my feelings, that surface them. I surface them. I let them come out. I cry. I call a friend. I do journaling. I process that. I listen to music that helps me get the emotion out. And then once I've gotten it out, I ask myself, how does this clarify what I want? And I begin to put my attention on that. Who are groups who are working, if I'm not already engaged? Where are there groups that I can sign up for? How can I, instead of getting, because nothing is going to come out of, in my mind, what I've learned, and this is after years of learning and thinking about this and learning from different teachers and educators, that almost there's not going to be much, because those folks are still going to do what they're doing. But what I need to do is begin to invest. That may clarify for me if it's something that's important enough and upsetting enough that that's something that I want to go in on with other folks and see who's already organizing in this. How can I amplify their message? How can I donate to them? How can I put energy toward what I want in the world and place my focus on that? Because when I focus on that, I remain productive and I remain engaged. And yeah.
I want to reflect back to you something that you just said that I think is really important. I'm saying this for myself, and so maybe others will find it useful too. Because when you first talked about sort of a self-conscious pivot, I thought I understood what you meant, and I did. But I was adding something that you didn't say, which I'm glad you went on to talk about, which is that you don't deny the anger or
No,
whatever those negative. I'm
no, it's
putting air
always
quotes around
honored.
negative, and I
No, it's
think that's
always
really
sacred.
that's really, really important. And I don't think that we as a culture understand that or do it. I mean, and we sort of, it's like, I know I fall prey to this, that I feel like I somehow shouldn't be, I'm putting air quotes again around that word,
Right,
having
right.
negative emotions. And so even when I started asking you this question, I'm realizing now that behind the question was my desire to not feel those negative emotions. And I was mistakenly sort of projecting onto you that you somehow weren't feeling them. But that's not at all what you're
No.
saying.
Oh,
You're
I
saying,
feel lots of feelings.
yeah, no, and I think this is really, really important. You're not saying you don't feel the negative emotions. You're saying you don't let them drive you. And
Right.
that's different. I mean, you
And
honor them and you feel them, and then you decide where you want to put your energy. I love it.
I want to specifically name what you're surfacing that I love. That's could be arguably the unofficial subtitle of our podcast, which is
We have
both
so many
and.
we have so many
Right.
unofficial subtitles.
One of them is both and, is because
Yes.
there's this intense, entrenched either or dynamic with anger and intense feelings that either it's totally fine and it's great and like it's justified and it's fine to function from that place all the time, or it's vilified and you need to not do it and it's not appropriate and it's not helpful. And to me, it is solidly in the middle ground where it just is, and in part it is what you make it. And to me, either way, it's something that it's a part of our what's the word, not alarm system, it's a messenger. It gives it to me, my emotions are guideposts for
Mm.
me that give me a sense of things that not always my brain can comprehend or does, but does it too quickly for me to be able to process it. But when an emotion is lingering, that is helpful for me. And I leverage that. And at times I use that ferocity in rallies or in given spaces. And I don't even like making universal statements. I can tell for me that it is not sustainable long-term fuel, and that as humans it's helpful for us to have a range of different emotions. And I want to be honest too, that at times when I'm angry or have intense negative emotions, I think I'm more comfortable than a lot of folks are at processing them. But there are times where, like, I really like the light and I really like joy, but ultimately I find that it's going to still, if there's something that needs to be surfaced, it's going to keep knocking or it's going to manifest in some other way until Thich Nhat Hanh talks a lot about this, that we get to be present with it and ask a different emotions questions about what they want us to know. And that doesn't mean that they need to be there all the time. Just like we might have a great friend, but that great friend doesn't, it would be kind of weird if they were with you all the time. Like ideally, you're going to be mingling with other people, right? Like if I were joyful all the time, that would arguably be almost psychotic, but I'm not. That's the feeling that I strive for, where there's the most possibility, where there's fun and creativity, where solutions can just kind of come to me because there's a lightness and options are on the table and there's abundance and many different and it's beyond hope. It's saying I have faith and I have certainty. or I add that to it. Like, I don't think joy in and of itself inherently means that, but in that state of being, it's where it's saying, I am so committed to the outcome that I want that I'm going to begin to align with that before I see all the signs, whether it's specifically for me or in the context of movement work. And I've had such meaningful moments at times when I ultimately do connect with other folks who have been those people where at times we explicitly have this conversation or subtly comes up at different movement moments in the past 10 years where I don't know if other people are having the same thought, but I guess they are. I'm guessing they are. And I'm going to begin going out to marches, and I'm going to trust and doing the different things I can do with the people I know. And I'm going to trust that there are also other people who, even though it feels a little scary, are also going to be stepping out courageously, and trusting that also other people will be there to meet them along the journey.
You know what's coming up for me right now? This is really, I don't know where this is coming from, but I'm remembering a professor of mine from college. He was a sculpture professor from the fine arts department, Johnny Coleman, beautiful Black man with long dreads. And I remember in my mind, he is this just really creative, really brilliant, and really relaxed man. So this is 25 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, I'm talking, but it was those last two words that I just said, brilliant and relaxed, that was like kind of like blew my mind that you could be both of those things. Because prior
Yeah.
to really getting to know Professor Coleman, I'm not sure that I understood that those two things get to go together. I thought smart meant anxious. That's all
Right.
I'd
Because in the
seen.
context of white supremacy culture, smart means that you're perfect, which is impossible to maintain, and all these other things. Right.
Yeah, and
So
so it was like the only those two things I didn't he modeled for me. We never talked about it. I mean, it was like I was a 19-year-old kid. But I I just that's kind of what's coming up for me as you're talking about the way that you approach it and the like is that for so many of us whether we think of ourselves as activists or not, I think having model even like thinking about the idea that there could be a way to do this while honoring the so-called negative emotions, but actually cultivating joy while doing the work is frankly revolutionary in the same way that
it
Professor
is.
Coleman's brilliance, while combined with just a relaxed and like comfortable attitude, was revolutionary for me.
Right. And I love what, yeah. Oh, I'm so feeling what you're saying. And it also makes me want to clarify that as I've been taught by different teachers, joy is toward the very top of the scale. But I would also invite, if people have varying relationships with joy, that you mentioned relaxed. There's a whole range of optimal ideal feelings that also I choose from, like joy is the shorthand because that's the pinnacle of like, this is as best as it can get, you know. But also like relaxed and peaceful and hopeful, and words like possibility and curiosity and wonder. Like there's all kinds of,
Even
to be
comfort,
clear,
even
comfort, yeah,
comfort feels important.
relief,
Like,
relief, release, that, and that, as I've learned, like there's a whole scale, and anything that's a step up that's helpful to reach for and to do the things, not to force yourself to be in that state, but to do the work that helps you feel closer to that. It's just like um, a core piece here for me that I hold in these situations is, as much as possible, whatever is happening, to hold that there's still goodness in this world and there are still good things that are happening, and to maintain a balanced perspective, which doesn't mean at times that I don't go to really deep and profound dark places and into the shadows to process profound mourning when I lose someone I love, or when something deeply painful happens to me around racism in my community, or any number of different things that happen. But I don't stay in that place, because I also hold, and it's like a thing I say, and it's deeper than this, but that like every moment babies are being born and new flowers are blooming, and it's important to me to keep a balanced sustainable perspective to hold that amidst some of the losses and battles that are being lost, or people I adore who are being lost in the midst of the injustice, that there also are still moments of justice that are happening. And even if I'm not aware of them, that I hold that they are happening and that they are feasible, and that I need to be in as robust of a state of mind as possible, so I can do everything I can to contribute to making that be more of the case and reducing the instances of injustice and pain that show up and occur far more than many of us would like.
Yeah. Yeah. And here we are at the both and again, right? That I think you're right. That is the unofficial title of this conversation, this ongoing conversation, is the both and. Because even what you're saying is that even in the moments of the worst injustice, yes, and there are also other things happening that are beautiful and joyful and worth. We need to find ways to try and hold both.
Yeah, and that even in the midst of like a teacher from whom I've learned teaches to ask in moments that are really difficult, that I found very, very helpful, is when something awful happens, to say to myself, I wonder what wonderful things will come from this.
You used that with me recently, and like within the past 6 months, where there was something that really hard that happened in my life, and you asked that question, and
Yeah.
it works. It
And I
really is
ask
very
it at
useful.
times. And I've said it, I said it when my father had a medical crisis. I've said it when a huge chunk of ice fell from a roof and landed on and cracked over my head, right? Like, I've said it at times when I did not have an answer in that moment, but I put out the possibility, and consistently over the course of the day, rather than being like, why did this happen? And then I might still think like, this is awful. It's not like I ignored negative
Right.
things. A Jew of color I adore, Jackie Baldwin, once said in a gathering, uh, all shit is fertilizer. And I was like, that is like a quote from my life. And I've adapted it to say, all shit is fuel or fertilizer. That I've decided in my life that something is either going to fertilize, I'm going to use that garbage, that dookie, to fertilize soil and water the seeds that I want to water, to not let it shift the seeds that I'm watering, but to continue to water the seeds I want, and use that, or use it as fuel. But that it's not on the long-term fuel, but to make meaning of it in a way that continues to move me in the direction of my goals, which are mostly around wanting everyone to be healthy and free and live the lives that they want in ways that contribute to collective coexistence.
Yeah. So your question about what wonderful thing will come of this, is a great reminder. I will sometimes get stuck thinking it shouldn't be like this. Whatever that thing happened, the
Yeah.
ice,
Yes.
the medical,
Yes.
whatever it was, it shouldn't have happened. And that's actually not a useful phrase.
Yeah.
Because it did
It
happen. So
did.
now
Right.
what? And
Right.
and your question actually just shifts it naturally without having to like take the word should.
Like,
Like I
this
have
has
to really
happened, remaining in the present moment. Like, this
exactly.
has, as awful
Yeah.
as it is, as much as I didn't want this to be the reality, it is the reality. And so
So now what?
now, yeah, so now what?
Yeah.
And one, there's going to be a lot of likely crying for me,
Yeah. Me too.
and or shaking or whatever it is I need to do to process. And also when I'm ready, and I don't do it before I'm ready, I don't force it. And I was like, and it's when it feels like it's ready to come out of me, then I'll say that thing. I'll acknowledge that thing, but it's not forcing it, but it is when we're ready, when we feel ready for that, to embrace that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really smart. Well, happy birthday, April.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Woo.
sharing your wisdom with me on your birthday.
Thanks. And there's so much more to come. There's so many different things and strategies and techniques and stuff that
Yeah.
I'm excited about. Thanks for tuning in. Our show's theme music was composed by Elliot Hammer. You can find this track and other beats on Instagram at Elliot Hammer. If this episode resonated with you, please share it and subscribe. To join the conversation, visit juicetalkracialjustice.com, where you can send us a question or suggestion, access our show notes, and learn more about our team. Take care until next time, and stay humble and keep going.